Field artillery is a category of mobile artillery used to support armies in the field. These weapons are specialized for mobility, tactical proficiency, long range, short range and extremely long range target engagement. Until the early 20th century, field artillery were also known as foot artillery, for while the guns were pulled by beasts of burden, the gun crews would usually march on foot, thus providing fire support mainly to the infantry. This was in contrast to horse artillery, whose emphasis on speed while supporting cavalry units necessitated lighter guns and crews riding on horseback. Whereas horse artillery has been superseded by self-propelled artillery, field artillery has survived to this day both in name and mission, albeit with motor vehicles, towing the guns, carrying the crews and transporting the ammunition. Modern artillery has also advanced to rapidly deployable wheeled and tracked vehicles and precision-delivered munitions capable of striking targets at ranges between 15 and 300 kilometers. Types: field guns, capable of long-range fire. Gun howitzers, capable of high or low-angle fire with a long barrel. Howitzers, capable of high-angle fire. Infantry support guns, directly support infantry units. Mortars, lightweight weapons that fire projectiles at an angle of over 45 degrees to the horizontal. Mountain guns, lightweight weapons that can be moved through difficult terrain. Multiple rocket launchers, mobile rocket artillery launches. History: early modern era early artillery was unsuited to the battlefield, as the extremely massive pieces could not be moved except in areas that were already controlled by the combatant. Thus, their role was limited to such functions as breaking sieges. Following the beginning of the gunpowder era, the first field artillery came into being as metallurgy allowed thinner cannon barrels to withstand the explosive forces without bursting. However, there was still a serious risk of the constant changes of the battlefield conspiring to leave behind slow-moving artillery units, either on the advance, or more dangerously, in retreat. Artillery units were particularly vulnerable to assault by light cavalry, which were frequently used in this role. Only with a number of further inventions did the concept of field artillery really take off. One of the earliest documented uses of field artillery is found in the 14th century Ming Dynasty treatise Huo Longjing. The text describes a Chinese cannon called a 1,000-ball thunder cannon, manufactured of bronze and fastened with wheels. The book also describes another mobile form of artillery called a barbarian attacking cannon, consisting of a cannon attached to a two-wheel carriage. 20th century. Before World War I, field artillery batteries generally fired directly at visible targets measured in distances of meters and yards. Today, modern field batteries measure targets in kilometers and miles and often do not directly engage the enemy with observed direct fire. The 100-fold increase in the range of artillery guns in the 20th century has been the result of development of rifled cannons, improvements in propellants, better communications between observer and gunner, and technical improvements in gunnery computational abilities. Most field artillery situations require indirect fire due to weather, terrain, nighttime conditions, distance or other obstacles. These gunners can also rely upon a trained artillery observer, also called the forward observer, who sees the target, relays the coordinates of the target to their fire direction center, which in turn translates those coordinates into a left-right aiming direction, an elevation angle, a calculated number of bags of propellant, and finally a fuse with a determined waiting time before exploding to be set, which is then mated to the artillery projectile now ready to be fired. Field artillery team. Modern field artillery has three distinct sections. All batteries have a fire support man, fire direction control, and cannoners. The FOS are forward with the infantry, where they can see the targets and call for fire upon them. They call the FDC on the radio and transmit a request for fire in the format of CFF. The FDC calculates the CFF and sender deflection and elevation to the gun line. The gun line cranks the specified elevation and deflection on the howitzers, punch the artillery shell followed by the bag. Depending on the CFF, the gun line will fire the round when they are ready or when the foe calls and tells them to fire. The foe spots the round and sends a correction back to the FDC, and the process starts all over again until it's done. The batteries are many kilometers behind the FLOT. They plan a location where they can be fire capability for some certain amount of time and do multiple fire missions before needing to displace. In normal operations, the FOS locate targets and transmits the CFF to the FDCs. They can also calculate defensive fire tasks. These are pre-planned missions, typically just in front of or upon one's own positions, designed with the intention of either suppressing potential attacks, or in dropping fire on a recently abandoned or overrun position to prevent the enemy from consolidating there. Because the calculations have already been done, the fire can be called down very quickly when it is needed. Reconnaissance and advance party. The advance party consists of the battery commander, his driver, first sergeant, gunnery sergeant, FDC guide, gun guides, and communications representatives. Initially, the party looks to find suitable positions for an artillery unit to perform fire missions from. Then they perform what is known as route reconnaissance. The primary purpose of this reconnaissance is to determine the suitability of the route of the unit's movement. Items to be analyzed include possible alternate routes, cover, concealment, location of obstacles, likely ambush sites, contaminated areas, route marking requirements, and the time and distance required to traverse the route. Several factors are taken into consideration. Once a location is determined and having arrived at the new position, the advance party conducts a security sweep and prepares the position for occupation. The purpose of the advance party security with MET-T in the absence of enemy troops, mines, booby traps, NBC hazards, and so on. If these threats or conditions are present in the proposed position area, the advance party breaks contact with any enemy forces or marks minefield and hazards and moves on to find another position area. The battery commander can coordinate for additional assets, or augment the advance party with internal assets, to provide the additional ability to clear areas of small enemy forces, obstacles, and minefields. Natural cover must be used to the maximum. Security is continuous throughout advance party operations. Once a location is determined to be safe, the advance party prepares the position for eventual howitzer emplacement. This consists of several procedures such as escorting each howitzer to its prepared position, setting up communications, providing the unit with its initial azimuth of fire, and providing each gun with an initial deflection. This entire process is covered in U.S. Army Field Manual 6-50 Chapter 2. Forward observer. Because artillery is an indirect fire weapon, the forward observer must take up a position where he can observe the target using tools such as binoculars and laser rangefinders and call back fire missions on his radio or telephone. The foe usually sits on the ground in cover, from which he can see the enemy. However, he may also be airborne. This was one of the very first uses of aircraft in World War I. He must take great care not to be observed by the enemy, especially if in a static position. Discovery of an foe does not only jeopardize his personal safety, it also hampers the ability of the battery to lay fire. Using a standardized format, the foe sends map references and bearing to target, a brief target description, a recommended munition to use, and any special instructions such as danger close. The foe and the battery iteratively walk the fire onto the target. The FDC signals the foe that they have fired and the foe knows to observe fall of shot. He then signals corrections. These are normally of the form of left-right of the bearing line and distance along it, for example right 50 add 100. When the fire is good enough, the foe signals target on fire for effect. If the mission requires a walking barrage, he may continue sending correction orders. The foe may be called upon to direct fire for close air support or naval artillery in addition to field artillery-based howitzer and infantry-based mortar units. The U.S. Army Field Manual describing the duties and responsibilities is FM 6-30, Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures for Observed Fire. Fire Direction Center. Typically, there is one FDC for a battery of 6 guns, in a light division. In a typical heavy division configuration, there exist 2 FDC elements capable of operating 2 4-gun sections, also known as a split battery. The FDC computes firing data, fire direction, for the guns. The process consists of determining the precise target location based on the observer's location if needed, then computing range in direction to the target from the gun's location. These data can be computed manually, using special protractors and slide rules with pre-computed firing data. Corrections can be added for conditions such as a difference between target and howitzer altitudes, propellant temperature, atmospheric conditions, and even the curvature and rotation of the Earth. In most cases, some corrections are omitted, sacrificing accuracy for speed. In recent decades, FDCs have become computerized, allowing for much faster and more accurate computation of firing data. The FDC at the battalion level is responsible for recording friendly and enemy positions, tracking available battery munitions, and determining the optimal response for engaging a target identified by the foe. Command post. In most artillery batteries, the command post controls the firing of the guns. It is usually located at the battery center so as to be able to communicate easily with the guns. The CP should be well camouflaged, but the CPO should be able to see all the guns with ease. Gun markers are sometimes placed in front of the CP to remind the CPO which gun is in which position. The CPO is assisted by 2 ACs, i.e., assistants, who operate the fire data computers. The GPO and CPO work at the plotter to ensure that the data calculated by the ACs is accurate and safe. The CP signaler is contact with the OP, or observation post, where the forward observer officer works with the OP team to identify targets and call back fire data. In recent years, headset radios have become common for communication between the CPO and gun detachment commanders. Guns. The final piece of the puzzle is the gun line itself. The FDC will transmit a warning order to the guns, followed by orders specifying the type of ammunition and fuse setting, bearing, elevation, and the method of adjustment, or orders for fire for effect. Elevation and bearing orders are specified in mills, and any special instructions, such as to wait for the observer's command to fire, relayed through the FDC. The crews load the howitzers and traverse and elevate the barrel to the required point, using either hand cranks or hydraulics. Counterbattery fire aimed at disabling or destroying enemy guns is known as counterbattery fire. Removing the threat posed by enemy artillery is an important objective on the battlefield. Most of the time enemy batteries are too far away for the infantry to engage, so it falls to artillery to do this job. The battery uses a variety of techniques to calculate the position of the enemy battery, then can lay fire upon it. If possible, a foe can access a position to call fire on enemy guns directly, either on the ground or in the air. Or a battery can be located using counter-battery radar, which can be used to observe the fall of enemy shells and thus calculate their trajectory. A correctly calculated trajectory will reveal the location from which the shell was fired, which information can then be passed on to a friendly battery command post as a fire mission. Defenses against counter-battery fire. To defend against counter-battery fire, there are 2 points of attack. Either remove the enemy's ability to observe or make his observations irrelevant, obsolete. To remove the ability to observe, one must attack the observation assets. Because most counter-battery radar is active, the location can be determined electronically from listening to the beams. If one suspects one's position is being observed by a covert foe, then a mission, either artillery or infantry, will be raised to deal with this threat. Alternatively, one can choose to make their observations obsolete by repeatedly moving the guns. Hence self-propelled guns. Ordinary towed guns can take a while to emplace and relimber and are not armored, so they are vulnerable to counter-battery fire and take a while to engage when at a new location. Self-propelled guns do not suffer from these restrictions. They can drive up, drop their trails, fire and move on. Because of their armor, they are less vulnerable to counter-battery fire. However, this armor is light by comparison to that of a tank, so it only protects from light fire and shrapnel. Another disadvantage of self-propelled guns is that they tend to be equipped with lighter, less accurate guns. Depending on the nature of the battle being fought, either or both of these drawbacks could prove a severe restriction. However, this is not necessarily true of modern self-propelled guns such as the German PZH-2000. This has a 155 mm main armament that can, with assisted firing charges, reach 60 km, has an average speed of 35 miles per hour, and has a fully computerized fire control system that enables it to move fire before the enemy can pin it down for counter-battery fire. It has a rate of fire 10 rounds per minute. Parent battalion and U.S. Army Brigade, USMC Regimental FDCs. FDCs also exist in the next higher parent battalion that owns 2 to 4 artillery batteries. Once again, an FDC exists at the U.S. Army Brigade or USMC regimental level that owns the battalions. These higher-level FDCs monitor the fire missions of their subordinate units and will coordinate the use of multiple batteries or even multiple battalions in what is called a battalion or brigade regimental mission. In training and wartime exercises, as many as 72 guns from 3 battalions may all be coordinated to put steel on the target, in what is called a brigade regimental time on target, or brigade regimental TOT for short. The rule is, silence is consent, meaning that if the lower unit does not hear cancel the mission, or even a check firing order from the higher monitoring unit, then the mission goes on. Higher-level units monitor their subordinate units' missions both for active as well as passive purposes. Higher-level units may also get involved to coordinate artillery fire across fire support coordination boundaries where one unit cannot fire into without permission from higher or adjacent units that own the territory. Major artillery battles. First Battle of Panipat, Battle of Malvern Hill, Battle of the Somme, Battle of Vimy Ridge, Third Battle of Ypres, Battle of Talleyrand, Siege of Dien Bien Phu, Battle of the Bulge, Battle of Bloody Ridge, Battle of Old Baldy, Battle of Kumsong, Battle of Norfolk, Battle of Illomancy, Viborg Petros Arvodes Offensive, Battle of Nam Dong, Battle of Chipyong-ni, Battle of Dongdang, Battle of Kolar, Battle of Suasari, Tartu Offensive, Battle of the Silo Heights, Battle of Nyat Java, Battle of Tian Hara, Battle of Berlin, Sino-Soviet border conflict, Battle of Hanko, Battle of the Oder-Neishir, Battle of Halb, Second Battle of Fallujah, Operation Medusa, Siege of Sangin, Battle of Gamzia, Operation Eagle Summit, Battle of Remagen, Second Battle of Donetsk Airport, Operation Magistral,